Rain lashes against the windows of the Valerio Tower. The city sleeps, unaware that a king of blood and empire is about to face a past he buried 10 years ago. Dante Valerio, feared by every enemy and loved by none, walks into a pharmacy for the first time in a decade and freezes. There she is, Bella, the woman who left him, the woman he never stopped wanting, and in her arms, a baby with his eyes. But before he can reach her, gunshots shatter the silence. The world he thought he controlled explodes in chaos, and one question burns in his mind. How could she disappear, only to return with a secret that could destroy everything? Before we dive into today's journey, I want to know, where are you watching me from right now, and what's the time where you are? Drop it in the comments. I want to see how far the Valerio story is reaching tonight. He ruled an empire of blood until he saw her return baby formula she couldn't afford. Rain slashed against the windows of Valerio Tower, 73 floors above a city that sparkled like a jewel while drowning in its own shadows. Lightning fractured the skyline, illuminating Dante Valerio's face in sudden white strokes, highlighting the hard plains of a man who had not smiled in 10 years. His hand, steady as a surgeon's, traced the final signature across a death warrant. The same hand that once traced poetry across Bella's skin now wrote the end for another soul. Marco, his consigliere, leaned across the obsidian desk, the tablet catching the cold light of the room. "Shipment's clean, boss, but you look like hell." Dante didn't answer. His gaze drifted over the city, his migraine pulsing like a bullet lodged behind his eyes. Painkillers. He needed them. He hadn't stepped outside in 10 years without purpose, without orders to give or blood to spill. Tonight, the purpose was petty, human, fragile. Painkillers. He rose. His suit was black as midnight, tailored to kill the man, not hide him. The elevator mirrors reflected a man shaped by control, danger, and solitude. The world below had no idea a storm was about to crash through fluorescent lights and supermarket aisles. The street was slick with rain. Tires hissed against wet asphalt. Pedestrians shuffled under umbrellas, ghosts unaware of Dante walking among them. He ignored the umbrellas. The rain was cleaner than his blood-stained hands. Westlake Pharmacy's automatic doors sighed open, sterile light spilling onto wet tiles. The antiseptic smell hit him like a memory he didn't want. Shelves of white bottles and red boxes stood like silent sentinels, each promising relief from pain, disease, life. None of it belonged to him. And then, motion. A figure at the far aisle, swaying slightly, clutching a small, fragile body. Bella. It should have been impossible. 10 years, 10 endless years. And there she was, thinner. Her once luminous hair now flat and weighed down by exhaustion. Her face carved by sleepless nights and too many fights with fate. And in her arms, a baby, crying. A sound Dante had not expected to pierce him. She bent down for a can of formula, hesitated, glanced at the price. Her hand trembled. The bills in her purse were too few. With a quiet, defeated sigh, she returned it to the shelf. "I'll come back tomorrow," she whispered to the cashier, voice cracking under the weight of everything she could not say. Dante froze. The child turned toward him, eyes wide, gray-green, sharp, piercing. His eyes, the same color, the same depth, a ghost of his own blood staring back at him, demanding recognition. He stepped forward, 1 foot deliberate, measured. Bella's head snapped up. Her eyes locked on his. For a moment, everything, the fluorescent lights, the humming of the refrigeration units, the distant thunder, disappeared. All that existed was her and the child in her arms, and the man she had once loved and feared all at once. She went pale. Every color drained from her face. Her hands clutched the baby tighter. Dante's chest constricted, a strange ache searing through muscle and bone. He hadn't felt this vulnerability in years, maybe ever. the empire, the power, the fear he commanded, all meaningless compared to the sight of her standing there, fragile, human, alive. Bella, he breathed. The name almost choked him. The baby whimpered. She adjusted him in her arms, instinctively shielding him from the world. Dante's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but instinct, trained for survival and war, returned instantly. The silence shattered. Headlights flared through the front glass. Tires screeched on wet asphalt. A black SUV skidded to the curb, doors flinging open in perfect chaos. Men in masks spilled out, rifles raised, moving with lethal precision. Dante's heart didn't race. His mind didn't panic. He had faced death too many times to be afraid. But now, for the first time in a decade, the mission wasn't about him. It was about her and the child. He lunged. "Down!" he barked, the word cutting through the humming fluorescent lights like a blade. Bella froze. Time slowed. The fluorescent lights flickered. Rain beat a frantic rhythm against the glass. Dante's hands were on her, shoving her behind the counter as the first shot shattered the front doors. Glass rained down like deadly confetti. The baby screamed, high and terrified, echoing through the aisles. The attackers returned fire. Dante rolled, his suit jacket flaring, hitting the ground, sliding along slick tiles. One of the masked men raised his weapon, aiming for the counter where Bella crouched. Dante fired twice. Precise. Lethal. The man fell. The world narrowed to action and reaction. Another round of gunfire ripped through the air, pinging against the metal shelving. Pills and packages tumbled. The baby whimpered again, and Dante's teeth ground in frustration. Bella looked at him, eyes wide, terrified, yet somehow defiant. He could see the same spark that had once drawn him to her. Courage hidden under fear, strength under exhaustion. "Stay down," he commanded, voice low, calm, lethal. "I've got this." Her lips trembled, but she obeyed. The baby clutched at her chest. Dante's eyes scanned the room. 5 attackers, 2 down, 3 left, Bratva, Russian markings on their necks. He counted and planned in seconds. Another masked man lunged at her, knife in hand. Dante's reflexes, honed over decades of blood and betrayal, snapped into motion. He threw himself between the knife and the child. One motion, clean, efficient, death by design. The remaining 2 hesitated. One tried to flank him. Dante pivoted, Glock snapping from his holster. He fired. The man dropped. Silence descended, but the city outside had heard the chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Dante's chest heaved. The baby cried. Bella clutched him tighter, finally allowing herself a shuddering breath. Dante crouched, scanning for any remaining threat. Every instinct screamed danger, but the attack had been a warning, not the real play. He glanced at her. Fear, exhaustion, love, hate, and 1,000 words unspoken swirled in her eyes. For the first time in a decade, he realized how much he had lost, how much they had lost. And then, his phone buzzed in his suit pocket. Unknown number. A child's voice, small and trembling, said, "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Dante froze. His vision narrowed. The world tilted. This was not Luca, not his baby, not yet. Outside, rain hammered the glass. Lightning fractured the city skyline again. The SUV engines roared, signaling the next wave. The attackers weren't finished. Dante's jaw tightened. One thought ruled his mind. Protect her. Protect the child. No one survives today without answering to him. He rose, Glock in hand, moving toward the shattered glass doors, eyes scanning, muscles coiled, the predator back in full. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside the pharmacy, and somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, waiting, calculating. The front doors shattered completely. Gunfire tore through the air again. Dante shoved Bella and the baby behind the counter, but this time, he realized, this was bigger than any attack he had ever faced. Someone had crossed the line. Someone had come for all of them. He hadn't killed in public for 5 years. Tonight he broke that rule for her. The first shot cracked the sterile air, ricocheting off the tiled floors, shattering every ounce of calm that had lingered since the door slammed open. Dante Valerio's reflexes had not dulled. He drew both Glock 19s from their custom leather holsters with a fluid motion, as natural as breathing. Fingers curled around the triggers, steady, controlled. 5 men, Bratva markings on their necks and the lethal precision of trained killers, stormed into the pharmacy. They moved like predators, but Dante had hunted predators before. He didn't flinch. He waited, calculated. 3 men never made it to the shelves. The first fell backward, a silent curse on his lips. The second twisted mid-step, eyes wide before Dante's Glock ended it. The third collapsed on the cold tile with a dull thud. Only 2 remained. One of them was slower, more cautious, trying to flank the counter. The other lunged toward Bella. Dante's blood ran cold. The man's knife kissed the baby's cheek before Dante could react. The air smelled of fear and blood, sharp and immediate. "Valerio sends his regards, Princess," the man hissed, leaning close to Bella, knife pressed to Luca's throat. Dante's voice was ice. "Wrong, Princess, she's mine." The shot rang out, singular, perfect, clean. The knife fell. The man crumpled, eyes wide with disbelief. Sirens began wailing in the distance, but they were faint, far away, not enough to stop what needed doing. Dante's hands were trembling just slightly as he scooped Bella and Luca into his arms. His sleeve was streaked with blood. Hers, theirs, someone else's. But he didn't notice. He couldn't notice. His mind focused entirely on escape. "No hospital! They'll find you!" he growled. His words were sharp, slicing through the panic that clung to the small aisle like fog. He moved with purpose, his boots slick on the wet floor, weaving past toppled displays and scattered products. Every motion was deliberate. Every step was a promise of survival. The attackers had been trained to instill terror. Dante had been trained to destroy it. He reached the alley. The matte black Maybach waited, engine purring, sleek and predatory. He placed Bella gently inside, then Luca, who sniffled and blinked up at him with unknowing eyes. The world outside the pharmacy was still a storm. Rain hammered the asphalt, turning the alley into a mirror of chaos. The car peeled out, tires skimming puddles, leaving shattered glass and echoing gunfire behind. Bella whispered, voice trembling, "You weren't supposed to ever see us again." Dante's gaze softened for a heartbeat, though his body remained steel. "I couldn't stay away," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her grip on Luca tightened. Dante noticed the tension in her arms, the way her knuckles whitened against the baby's skin. It mirrored the control she had always tried to maintain over her life. Always graceful, even broken. The Maybach rolled through rain-slick streets, headlights cutting through the darkness. Dante kept glancing in the rearview mirror, scanning every shadow. Every alley could hold another killer, every corner, another threat. Did they follow you here?" Bella asked, voice small. "They tried," Dante replied without looking at her. "But this ends now. Not here. Not today." Luca stirred in her arms. A small yawn, the innocence of a child who didn't yet understand the rules of their dangerous world. Dante's chest constricted. He had made mistakes, countless ones, but protecting this child, this fragment of the life he never had, would not be one of them. He guided the car through winding streets, quiet except for the storm. The city seemed oblivious to what had transpired in the pharmacy. Blood, gunfire, chaos. But Dante didn't forgive the world for ignoring it. Bella finally lowered her voice further, almost a whisper. How did you find me?" Dante's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror. The rain made her hair cling to her face. She looked vulnerable, human, impossibly fragile, and yet she still carried fire. "You can't hide from me forever," he said. Silence returned for a few blocks. The only sound was the tires skimming puddles and the faint, continuous wail of distant sirens. Dante's phone buzzed suddenly in his breast pocket. He ignored it at first. A dozen things ran through his mind. A trap, another Bratva cell, the past clawing back. Then it buzzed again, insistent. He pulled the device out, eyes narrowing at the unknown number flashing on the screen. A child's voice rang through the speaker, small, trembling, innocent. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Dante froze. Not Luca, not his son, not yet. The weight of the voice crushed the air from the car. He gripped the wheel harder, knuckles whitening. Bella's eyes went wide. Who is that?" she whispered. Dante didn't answer immediately. Every instinct, every memory, every lesson in power and war screamed at him. Something was coming, something worse than he had anticipated. The night had only just begun. He glanced down the rain-slicked streets, his mind running through possibilities, enemies, traps, and betrayals. One thing was clear. The war had followed them here. It always did. Luca stirred again, whimpering. Dante's hand shifted instinctively to cradle the child closer, shielding him from the world he couldn't yet comprehend. Bella touched his arm lightly, hesitant, trembling, but her eyes were locked on his, searching, pleading, knowing. Dante's jaw tightened. His heart, though buried beneath years of blood and fear, beat fiercely. "I will find them," he said finally, voice low and cold as steel, "and anyone who touches you will regret it until their last breath." The city lights blurred past, but Dante's mind was sharp, calculating, focused. He had broken his own rules tonight, rules that had kept him alive, untouchable, untamed. But she, Bella, and Luca had changed everything. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, waiting, smiling, knowing Dante would break the rules, knowing he would kill, knowing he would protect them at any cost. The rain continued to fall. Tires hissed on asphalt. Sirens faded into the night. But then the phone buzzed again. The same little voice, urgent this time, repeating the same question. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" Dante's eyes narrowed. His hand tightened around the steering wheel, veins standing out, body coiled like a spring ready to strike. The answer was clear. The past had returned. And this time, it wasn't just bullets, threats, or rivals. It was personal. Too personal. The car turned sharply onto a deserted street, rain blurring the city lights, when Dante spotted it. Figures emerging from the shadows, silent, armed, and moving with deadly precision. He had no time to react, no angle to escape. Someone had found them, and this time, they weren't just after Bella or Luca. They were after him. He built a fortress no one could breach, except the woman who once held his heart. The streets of Seattle were drenched, neon signs bleeding into puddles, but Dante Valerio's world was far below, beneath the city, beneath the chaos. A hidden elevator whisked him down into a place no outsider had ever seen. An underground penthouse bunker beneath Pike Place, a palace of steel and glass, fortified like a military compound, designed to withstand sieges, betrayals, and assassination attempts. A fortress built for a king of blood. He closed the armored door behind him. A hiss of hydraulics, a clank of steel, and the city noise was gone. Silence, except for the low hum of life support systems and the faint trickle of water from the shower where Luca sat, small hands splashing, giggling at a soap bubble. Bella was bent over him, careful, tender, and impossible to look at without remembering the fire she had once ignited in him. Dante didn't speak at first. He knelt on the cold concrete beside a medical kit, shirt off, tracing a shallow gunshot graze along his side. The scar beneath the wound screamed of old battles, of years spent ruling empires, shedding blood, taking lives. 10 years of war mapped across his body like topography, every line a story, every mark a warning. Bella looked up from Luca, eyes sharp, luminous in the sterile light. "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" she asked quietly. No accusation, just pain. Dante's jaw tightened. He had built walls around his heart, around his life, but she had a way of dismantling both with a single question. "Because you chose the crown over me, Dante, every time," she said, voice taut. Her words pierced deeper than any bullet. He swallowed. Flashed back to that last night, the night he had chosen the Mafia over her, over them, over everything human in his life. She had begged him, hands on his chest, eyes glistening in the dim light of their bedroom, pleading for him to abandon the oath, to abandon the empire that had consumed him. He had walked away anyway. The memory was sharp, cruel. Her shoulders shaking as she tried to leave at 3 a.m, dragging her suitcase through the rain-soaked streets while he turned, steel in his spine, leaving her behind. Now she was here, in his fortress, and for a moment time had nothing else to offer. "You're not running again, Principessa," he said, voice low, commanding. His hand rested lightly on the door panel that could seal them in for hours, days, if necessary. "Not with my son." Bella's gaze softened, but the tension in her body didn't ease. She had lived in shadows for too long, a fugitive in a world that had taken everything from her. Yet here, beneath the city, she let herself breathe, even for a moment, because he had promised safety, because he had come for her, because he was Dante. Luca's laughter broke through the tension, a fragile note of innocence. He splashed water, droplets catching the light, and for a second, the bunker was not a fortress of steel and weapons, but a home. Dante cleaned the wound on his side with meticulous care, his mind already planning for what came next. The bratva would not stop. Vincenzo's reach was long. Every alley, every street, every shadow could hide a threat. And now, with Bella and Luca here, he had to fight not just for power, but for family. He finished stitching the graze, chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Muscles tense, scars gleaming faintly in the harsh light. He surveyed the room. Maps lined the walls, screens flickered with surveillance, weapons were laid out with military precision. He had built this place to be unbreachable. Yet tonight every instinct screamed that unbreachable might not be enough. Bella wrapped Luca in a towel, her movements fluid, maternal, protective. "He's sleeping now," she said, "for a few hours at least." Dante's eyes softened for a split second as he watched her. He had ruled with fear and power for a decade, but this quiet human moment reminded him of what he had almost lost, what he had fought to regain. And then the stillness broke. The mail slot clicked. A single sound in the silence, mechanical, deliberate. Dante's eyes narrowed. Bella tensed. Luca stirred, sensing the tension. Dante moved with precision, silent, deadly. Every muscle coiled, every breath measured. He approached the slot, hand resting on the grip of his Glock. Through the slot, a red rose slid in, followed by a small black flash drive. Bella's eyes went wide. Her breath caught. She reached for it, fingers trembling. Dante didn't touch it. He watched her, reading the reaction, scanning for danger. His empire had taught him. Gifts from enemies were always traps. She lifted the rose, the petals bright, impossibly red against the dim lighting of the bunker. Then she looked at the flash drive, holding it like a relic of something forbidden. A note lay atop the rose, written in elegant, cruel handwriting. "Welcome home, my queen. V." Dante's blood ran cold. The initial V was familiar, too familiar. A ghost from a past he thought he had buried. A name that had once threatened to destroy everything he had built. his fists clenched. The bunker's air felt heavier, charged with the weight of inevitability. He had prepared for assassins, for Bratva hits, for city-wide betrayals, but this was personal. Bella met his gaze. Fear, anger, and something deeper shimmered in her eyes. She knew the name as well as he did. Vincenzo, his brother, dead, buried beneath the marina, or so they had believed. Dante's mind raced. Every contingency, every escape, every plan he had ever prepared, suddenly inadequate. The flash drive could be a message, instructions, a threat, a trap. And yet it was delivered with a flourish, a signature of arrogance and power. Dante moved to the security console, eyes scanning the feed. Nothing yet. All screens dark, empty. But he knew. He always knew when danger was coming. Bella clutched Luca tighter, lips pressed to his forehead. "What does he want?" she whispered, voice barely audible. Dante didn't answer immediately. Instead, he surveyed the bunker, his mind already calculating, already preparing for the storm to come. He had built this fortress to hold anything, anyone. But Vincenzo was not anyone. He was the past, the betrayal, the war that had never ended. He picked up the rose, fingers brushing the petals. A thin, bitter smile crossed his face. Danger had a name, and now it had a signature. Bella's eyes searched his, seeking reassurance, seeking hope, but Dante's gaze was hard, unyielding. He would protect them, always. The red petals seemed to glow in the harsh bunker light, a warning and a promise. The flash drive sat heavy in her palm. Secrets were coming, revelations, blood would be spilled, and Dante knew instinctively that the coming war would not leave anyone untouched. The wind howled faintly through the ventilation shafts. The city above was oblivious, but below, in this fortress of steel and concrete, the quiet before the storm had arrived. And then, somewhere in the shadows, Dante felt it. A presence cold, calculated, watching, waiting. The kind of presence that had ended empires before. The security feed flickered, and on the screen appeared a masked figure, standing in the empty streets above the bunker, holding something in his hand, a pistol, glinting in the rain. Dante's gut screamed that this was only the beginning. The message was clear. No fortress is safe, and no family is untouchable. Some ghosts wear Armani and smile like the devil. The bunker was silent except for the hum of servers and the occasional drip of condensation from the overhead pipes. Dante Valerio sat at the central console, black leather creaking under the weight of his body and the burdens of the last decade. His hands moved over the keyboard with precision, inserting the flash drive he had taken from the red rose. The screens flickered to life, green text cascading over a black background. A single image froze Dante in place. Security footage, not from tonight, not from the street outside, but from Bella's apartment. For months, someone had been watching her, every movement recorded, every pattern logged, every moment cataloged. A man in a crimson mask leaned against her balcony, invisible to neighbors, hidden by shadows. A ghost in the city, a predator patiently tracking his prey. Dante's jaw tightened. His mind raced. He recognized the technique instantly. Bratva trained, meticulous, patient, lethal, and the initials on the files, V. Only one man had ever left those markings. One name that could make Dante's blood turn cold even after 6 years. Vincenzo Valerio, Dante's older brother, presumed dead in the marina explosion that had been meant to erase him from existence. Bella's breath caught behind him. She had crept up quietly, sensing the storm that had already begun to rage in Dante's mind. Her hand clutched Luca's small shoulder as she peered at the screen. "Now that's impossible," she whispered. Dante didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes narrowed, cold, lethal, and filled with every memory of betrayal, rivalry, and violence that Vincenzo had ever inflicted. "Then why," he said, voice low and ice, "does my dead brother know our son's name?" Bella's face went pale. The weight of his question hit her like a physical blow. There was no easy answer. She had thought the past was buried. She had thought the nightmares had ended. But the shadows had always lingered, and now they were coming alive. Dante's gaze swept over every monitor in the bunker. Every security feed, every camera, every hidden sensor flickered and scanned. Nothing yet, nothing overt, but Dante knew the signs of an approaching storm. The flash drive contained more than surveillance: hidden files, encrypted messages, timestamps, locations. Vincenzo had not only survived the marina explosion, he had been orchestrating, watching, waiting, and now he had come for more than power. He had come for them. Bella swallowed hard. He's dead. I saw the reports, the explosion, everything. Dante's fist slammed against the console. Sparks flew across the screens. You thought he was dead, but you never know with a ghost, Principessa, especially one like Vincenzo. The room fell into tense silence. Luca stirred slightly in Bella's arms, sensing the tension, his small eyes blinking at the red and green glow of the monitors. He didn't understand what was happening, but Dante did. He had spent his life in a world where understanding was survival. Dante's mind ran through possibilities, every exit, every trap, every contingency the bunker could offer. He had built this place to withstand armies, to withstand betrayal, to withstand the Bratva, and every enemy he had made. But Vincenzo was no ordinary enemy. He was family. He was blood. He knew weaknesses that no outsider could find. And now he knew that Dante had something he wanted. Bella, Luca, the remnants of the life Dante had tried to reclaim. Bella looked at him, fear and trust tangled in her gaze. "What do we do?" she asked. Dante's eyes swept across the monitors again. "We prepare, we watch, and we wait. But make no mistake, he is coming." The temperature in the bunker shifted. The hum of electricity became a distant buzz. Dante's instincts screamed that something was wrong. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died entirely. Emergency red strobes illuminated the room. Every screen flickered to life at once. Every camera feed, every monitor, every digital display now carried the same single image. Vincenzo, he was alive. Standing in the city streets above the bunker, but his face was visible, smiling through the crimson mask, the kind of smile that promised pain, chaos, and ruin. "Hello, little brother," his voice echoed from the monitors, distorted but unmistakable. "Did you miss me?" Dante's eyes narrowed to slits. Every muscle in his body coiled like steel. The world contracted to that single moment. The sight of Vincenzo alive, the threat tangible, the past returning with a vengeance. Bella clutched Luca tighter, trembling. How is this possible?" she whispered. Dante didn't answer immediately. His mind calculated, strategized, anticipated. He had faced enemies, traitors, and assassins, but nothing like this. Nothing that carried the weight of blood, betrayal, and personal vendetta. The red strobe lights pulsed across the bunker. Every shadow became a threat, every corner a potential death trap. Dante's hands rested on his weapons, ready to strike, ready to defend, ready to kill if necessary. Vincenzo's message was clear. This was no longer about power or territory. This was personal. Family had been fractured, and now he was coming to finish what the marina explosion had failed to do. The security feeds continued to show him, motionless yet every movement deliberate, every shadow behind him calculated, the precision of a man who had waited years to return and strike. Dante's lips pressed into a hard line. "He wants us to feel fear," he muttered, more to himself than to Bella. But he doesn't know. We don't know the meaning of surrender. Bella's eyes met his. There was terror there. Yes, but also the unspoken truth they both understood. They were fighters, survivors, and nothing would break them. Not him, not Vincenzo, not anyone. Luca shifted in her arms, oblivious, innocent, a fragile symbol of life amidst the storm that was coming. Dante's chest tightened. He would protect him, no matter the cost. The bunker's emergency systems beeped and hummed, trying to stabilize power. Dante ignored it. His focus was on the figure on the screens, the man who had once been his brother, the ghost who refused to die. And then, Dante realized, Vincenzo wasn't just taunting them, he was orchestrating something larger. Every camera, every street, every shadow had been mapped. Every move Dante might make was already anticipated. Dante's fists clenched. He had lived in a world of control and strategy, but this was beyond anything he had faced. This was a war not just for empire, but for family, for blood, for the very life he was trying to reclaim. Bella whispered again, voice shaking. "Dante, what does he want?" Dante's eyes were lethal, focused, unyielding. "Everything," he said simply. "He wants everything. And he will come for it. We have to be ready." The red strobe lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls, across weapons, across maps of the city that had once been his domain. And then, as Dante's gaze returned to the screens, a chill ran down his spine. Vincenzo moved closer on the feed, stepping through the empty streets as though he owned the night. He held something in his hand, a single object glinting under the dim city lights. Dante's fingers tightened around his weapons. Every instinct screamed danger. Every calculation told him this was only the beginning. The bunker's security system buzzed erratically, alarms muted but present. Dante's mind raced. He had prepared for war, but this was something else, something more personal, more dangerous, more intimate. Vincenzo's mask tilted toward the camera, the devilish smile spreading, and a low, distorted voice filled every speaker in the bunker. "Did you really think burying me would end this, little brother? I've been waiting, and now your family is mine." He burned cities for her once. Now someone burned his world first. The abandoned cannery loomed like a skeleton of industry, rusted beams twisting into the gray Seattle sky. Rain streaked the windows, puddles forming on the cracked concrete floors. Dante Valerio stepped into the darkness, every movement deliberate, silent, deadly. His Glocks hung from his sides, the night air clinging to the cold metal. He had been a ghost in the city for years, and tonight, ghosts were all he would leave behind. Marco's message echoed in his mind, "Bring her to me, or Seattle burns." He didn't need more. The words were clear, threats of fire and blood, but the target was personal. Marco, gone. Bella, gone. Luca, gone. Only he remained, and he would not let them claim what was his. Every shadow in the cannery was a potential enemy. The room smelled of damp steel and rust. Old machinery groaned with age, echoing across the cavernous space. Dante moved silently, scanning every corner, every darkened alcove. The ghosts of industry hiding the ghosts of men ready to kill. 20 men waited, all armed, all loyal to Vincenzo, all certain they could kill the Don who had once ruled the city. They were wrong. The first man lunged with a crowbar. Dante sidestepped, wrist snapping, Glock spitting fire. Headshot, silent, precise. The second charged with a machete. Dante twisted, spun, closing the distance, a punch to the jaw sending him crashing into a rusted machine. A kick to the chest ensured he would not rise again. They thought overwhelming numbers meant victory. They had underestimated the predator they had provoked. One by one, men fell. Dante's movements were fluid, lethal, a dance of violence he had practiced since adolescence. Every shot, every strike, every step was measured. He had not killed in public for 5 years, but tonight rules did not matter. She was his, and anyone who touched her would bleed. Then he heard it. Marco's scream, a knife pressed against his throat, Marco's life hanging by a thread. Dante's eyes locked on the man holding him hostage. The initials on his jacket, the subtle insignia, confirmed it. Vincenzo's hand. "You're too late, Dante," the man hissed, voice dripping with venom. "She was always mine." Dante's gaze turned arctic. There was no fear, only calculation, only fury, only love twisted into lethal precision. One motion, one shot. The man fell. Marco staggered, blood running down his side, a deep gash opening in his abdomen. Pain flared in Dante's chest, not from the fight, but from the sight of betrayal, of loyalty shattered, of death paid for too late. He scanned the cannery. Smoke curled from a torn pipe, flickering light revealing the chaos of men who had thought him defeated. They weren't ready for the storm that was Dante Valerio unleashed. He moved like a shadow, slipping between machinery, using walls and columns as cover. Every round fired was controlled, calculated, precise. None wasted, none survived. Blood soaked the concrete floors, the metallic scent mixed with rainwater and the acrid tang of gunpowder. Each fallen man was a reminder of the world Dante had built, and the world Vincenzo sought to destroy. He found Marco slumped against a column, life draining from him, a message carved into his chest. She was always mine. Dante's hands shook, but his resolve hardened. He lifted Marco into his arms, carrying him toward a side exit, a narrow corridor he had scouted years ago. Every step was careful, calculated, a plan forming even as his heart threatened to drown in rage. The cannery groaned around them. A loose beam fell, metal clanging against the concrete floor. Dante didn't flinch. He had walked through fire, storms, and death itself. Tonight he would walk through vengeance. Marco coughed, blood seeping through his fingers. Dante, he whispered. His voice was ragged, weak but steady enough to convey the warning that had haunted the Don's mind since this war began. "Shh," Dante muttered. "I've got this. You stay with me. You survive." They reached the end of the corridor. Dante paused, listening. The cannery seemed endless, filled with shadows that were not all empty. He could feel them watching, waiting, anticipating. And then he realized the fight wasn't over. It would never be over. Not while Vincenzo lived, not while his son, his Bella, and his own vengeance were at stake. He opened the exit door carefully, eyes scanning. Outside, the night was silent. But silence in a war-torn world was never harmless. It was the calm before the storm. Dante set Marco down, checking his pulse. Still alive. Barely. The dawn's gaze swept the horizon. Somewhere in the shadows, somewhere in the city that had long since forgotten who ruled its underworld, Vincenzo was waiting, watching, calculating. Bella, Luca, Marco. All of them were now pieces on a chessboard designed by a man who had once been his brother, a man who had killed, betrayed, and survived the fire that had been meant to end him. Dante's body ached from old wounds, from new ones, from the weight of the lives in his hands. But his mind was sharper than ever. Every plan, every contingency, every weapon he had ever deployed was ready. He would not fail. He carried Marco into the shadows, disappearing into the alleys of Seattle, where rain masked his movements and darkness hid his presence. But the cannery, the men, the message, they lingered in his mind. Somewhere, beyond the city lights, a message awaited him. A challenge, a taunt. The war had only just begun. Bella's voice trembled behind him. "What now?" she asked. Her eyes searched his face. looking for answers, looking for hope, looking for the man who had once ruled empires with a mere glance. Dante's eyes were cold, lethal, and full of promise. "Now," he said, voice low, dangerous, "we finish this. We take back everything, and anyone who stands in our way dies." A distant explosion rattled the cannery walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. The city trembled, and Dante knew that the true battle was only beginning. He glanced at Luca, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos. A small life, untouched by the war above, yet the center of everything he would fight for. The rain outside turned heavier, pounding the streets with relentless fury, echoing the storm that had ignited in Dante's soul. And then Dante froze. A shadow moved across the skyline, closer than it should be, calculated, precise, deliberate. Someone had marked their next target. Someone had waited. Someone had crossed a line. Lightning struck, illuminating the figure standing atop a rooftop across from them. A sniper, trained, unblinking, rifle aimed directly at Luca. Dante's heart stopped. The countdown had begun. The first move had been made, and there was no turning back. She'd rather die free than live in his gilded cage. 48 hours, 2 full days of relentless pursuit. Every street corner, every alleyway, every neon-lit boulevard turned inside out under Dante Valerio's gaze. The city was his battlefield, but the war had changed. This wasn't about territory, not about money, not about the empire he had carved from blood and fear. This was personal. This was family. This was Bella and Luca. Every lead had gone cold. Every safe house she had used, every contact she trusted, vanished. It was as if she had melted into the shadows themselves. And yet Dante never doubted. He never paused. Rain-slick streets reflected the city lights in a fractured mosaic. Tires hissed as the matte-black Maybach tore through Aurora Avenue. Dante's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, his eyes scanning every shadow, every pedestrian, every flicker of movement. His mind ran faster than the car could carry him, calculating, anticipating, predicting. He had torn apart every Bratvassel, interrogated every informant, and yet she remained elusive. He had broken rules, laws, alliances, everything he had built over 10 years for this. And he would go further. He always went further for her. Finally, a faint signal. A motel off Aurora, modest, unassuming, the kind of place travelers overlooked. But Dante knew better. He had seen the signs, the subtle choices, the escape patterns that only someone trained to survive could leave behind. He parked in the shadows, the car blending with the night, rain dripping from the roof like cold fingers. Luca's small form was visible through the grimy window, cradled in Bella's arms. She was tense, trembling, her eyes scanning the street, a gun clenched in her shaking hand. The trembling wasn't fear, it was resolve, defiance, independence. Dante exhaled slowly, the first time in hours he allowed himself a breath. He didn't approach at first. He let her see him from the shadows, let her decide if he was a threat or salvation. Let her make the choice he had always respected, even if it wounded him. "I won't let you drag him into your war," she said, voice fierce yet fragile, gripping Luca tighter. Her hair clung to her damp face, rain and sweat mixing. Her stance was defiant even as exhaustion lined her features. Dante dropped to his knees for the first time in his life, surrendering in a way no one had ever seen. Not to enemies, not to allies, only to her. "Bella, I abdicate. The throne, the blood, the empire, everything. Just come home," he whispered. His voice was hoarse from silence and storm, vulnerable, human. The mask of dawn and predator stripped away. For a heartbeat, she almost believed him. The storm of anger and betrayal softened, just enough for her to see the man beneath the power, beneath the violence, beneath the scars. But then, an ominous flash of red across the window pane. the sniper's red dot, cold, precise, merciless, centered on Luca's forehead. Dante's reflexes ignited. His body moved before thought, instinct overriding reason. He lunged across the room, shoving Bella and Luca to the ground as a deafening explosion shattered the window. Glass sprayed across the motel room like a frozen storm, shards embedding themselves in walls, floor, and furniture. The acrid smell of gunpowder and rain-filled air mixed, suffocating. Dante rolled, cradling Luca against his chest, shielded by his own body. Bella screamed, a sound torn from the depths of terror and relief. Smoke curled through the room, thick and choking, obscuring vision, hiding dangers that lurked beyond the shattered glass. Dante's heart pounded in his chest, every beat synchronized with the chaos around him. Shards of glass embedded his skin, tearing at muscle and flesh, but he didn't care. Not yet. Luca was alive. Bella was alive. That was all that mattered. Finally, the smoke began to clear, drifting lazily as the storm outside subsided slightly. Dante's arms were a fortress around Luca. His eyes scanned the room, searching, calculating, every nerve taut, every sense heightened. And then he saw her. Bella. She was bleeding, shallow cuts across her arms and shoulder, but her chest rose and fell steadily. Her eyes, wide with shock and exhaustion, met his. It was never Vincenzo, she whispered, her voice trembling, heavy with confession. It was me. Dante froze. His breath caught. Time slowed. The world outside, the storm, the sniper, the shattered glass, all of it faded into the distance. Only her words remained. Only the weight of what she had done, what she had carried alone, what she had protected him from, what she had protected herself from. Luca whimpered softly, sensing the tension, and Dante held him tighter. His gaze never left Bella's, searching for truth, searching for the woman he had loved, betrayed, and longed for across years of war and exile. Her hands trembled as she reached toward him. I lied to protect him, to protect us. I couldn't let him become part of your war. Dante's jaw tightened. Rage, relief, love, and heartbreak all collided within him. He had spent a decade ruling an empire with iron and fire, but this was war of a different kind, one that tore through hearts rather than empires, one that left scars invisible to the eye. He lifted her, their bodies pressed together, blood and sweat mingling, a fragile shield against the world that sought to destroy them. His mind raced. Every exit, every contingency, every Bratva cell in Seattle, already accounted for, already ready. Never again, he murmured, voice low, deadly and filled with promise. No one touches you. No one touches him, ever. Bella's lips trembled. Tears mingled with rain and blood. I wanted to stop the cycle. I wanted freedom. For him, for us. Dante pressed his forehead to hers, closing his eyes briefly, feeling her heart race against his. You have freedom, he whispered. As long as I breathe, as long as I exist, I will make sure of it. Outside, the storm continued, relentless, but inside the shattered motel room, two warriors, one child, and a bond forged in blood and fire remained unbroken. Then Dante's eyes flicked to the shattered window. The red dot had vanished, but he knew better. The sniper was patient, calculating, watching, waiting. Every shadow was a threat, every alley a potential death trap, every reflection a danger. The war was far from over. Bella pressed closer, shivering, exhausted. Luca clutched her arm, his small body trembling. Dante wrapped both of them in his arms, a shield, a fortress stronger than any steel or bulletproof wall. He rose slowly, every motion deliberate, aware of the fragility of the moment. The city beyond the motel was alive with danger. Vincenzo had orchestrated every step, every hit, every betrayal. The world outside was a battlefield, but this was their life, fragile and fleeting, and Dante would fight for it with everything he had left. And then Dante heard it, a faint metallic click from the hallway outside, calculated, precise. A sound that meant death or betrayal was near. He pressed Luca to his chest, held Bella tighter, and whispered, "Whatever happens next, we survive. Together." The hallway door burst inward, splintering into jagged wood, and a masked figure stepped into the room, gun trained on Luca. Dante's heart froze. Every instinct screamed that the next second would decide everything: life, death, and the fragile future he had fought to reclaim. The most dangerous lie is the one you tell yourself. The sterile hum of the hospital room pressed in on Dante Valerio like a physical weight. Machines beeped rhythmically, tubes snaked into Bella's arms and neck, her chest rising and falling under the guidance of ventilators and monitors. White walls, fluorescent lights, cold, clinical, devoid of the fire, the passion, the chaos of the life he was used to. Yet nothing in all the towers, all the blood, all the empires he had built had prepared him for this. 5 days. Dante hadn't slept in 5 days. Not a wink, not a thought of rest. His eyes, sharp and haunted, scanned the room ceaselessly, searching for threats, for lies, for the faintest pulse of movement that might signal danger. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the war that had been waged in shadows and blood. But inside, every second was a battleground. The door to the hospital room slammed open. Agents swarmed in, black suits, badges flashing, guns drawn, hearts pounding with authority and fear alike. Among them, Agent Torres, cold, efficient, a woman whose gaze was sharp enough to pierce through armor and lies alike. "Isabella Moretti," she said, voice commanding, unyielding. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. Dante Valerio." The words hit Dante like a bullet. He turned sharply, eyes scanning, calculating. A trap. Always a trap. But Bella. Bella was cuffed to the bed, pale and fragile under the sterile lighting, yet her presence was more dangerous than any weapon he had faced. Flashback, his mind drew him back, sharper than reality. Years ago, Bella had been broken by his choice, by the empire he had embraced, the crown he had taken. She had been left behind in a world of shadows, and Vincenzo had found her then, waiting to exploit every weakness. She had made a deal with him, forced by desperation, fear, and the need to survive, to fake her death, to vanish with his money, to frame Dante, the man she once loved, the man whose absence had hollowed her soul. But then she had discovered she was pregnant. The fragile life growing inside her had changed everything. Fear of Vincenzo, fear of losing Dante, fear of losing herself. It had forced her to back out. She had fled, hiding not just from him, but from the consequences of her own choices. And now, years later, the past had caught up. Vincenzo had tracked her, manipulated her, ensured that Dante would face every ghost he had tried to bury. Dante's gaze softened, flickering with heartbreak, fury, and disbelief as he watched the woman he loved, chained, vulnerable, caught in a web of lies not entirely of her making. "You tried to kill me?" he demanded, voice low, dangerous, trembling with anger and pain. Tears streaked down her face. Her lips trembled, words barely audible. "I wanted to save you from yourself." Dante's mind whirled. Every memory, every betrayal, every choice collided in a storm of emotion and strategy. She had lied, she had deceived, but in the midst of lies, she had acted to protect him, from enemies, from himself, from the empire that had consumed him. He took a step forward, fists clenched, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed to break her free, to tear the agents apart, to claim her as he always had. But rules, law, strategy, they bound him here, at least for now. Bella's eyes searched his, pleading, begging, full of fragile truths she could no longer speak aloud. Her breaths were shallow, ragged. Every tube, every monitor, every life-sustaining device was a reminder of the cost of their choices, of the fragility of life when surrounded by war. Agent Torres moved closer, eyes steely. "Step away, Valerio. This is a federal matter." Dante ignored her. His focus never left Bella. The man who had ruled empires, who had walked through fire and death countless times, felt powerless in the face of her fragility. He knelt beside the bed, leaning close, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "Bella, tell me the truth, all of it. No more lies." Her lips trembled. I thought I was protecting you from everything you'd become, from the Empire, from the blood, from Vincenzo." The words struck like a blade. Every second of betrayal, every stolen moment of love, every flash of vulnerability returned to him. He had ruled with iron and fire, but her choices had always been for the heart, the soul, the one part of him no empire could own. Dante reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingertips traced the curve of her cheek, the line of her jaw, memorizing her again, as if he had to imprint her into memory before the world claimed her. Her eyes fluttered closed. The machines hummed, the alarms chimed softly, the reality pressing in around them. Dante held his breath. Time slowed, stretching into eternity, each second a drumbeat of fear, hope, and inevitability. He remembered every moment they had shared, every fight, every stolen kiss, every scar he had traced on her skin, and he realized that all of it had led to this moment, the revelation of secrets, the fragility of life, the truth that had remained buried beneath years of blood and betrayal. And then, the unthinkable. The heart monitor flatlined. The beep that had once been a steady rhythm of life, of hope, of fragile continuation, vanished. Only silence remained. Dante's heart froze. His hands tightened around hers, shaking. Panic surged cold and sharp. He looked at the machines, at the monitors, at Bella's pale face. "No," he whispered. The word was both a prayer and a curse. Agent Torres shouted. Agents moved. Chaos erupted in the room, but Dante barely noticed. Time had contracted to a single point, a single heartbeat. Bella, the woman who had survived his empire, his choices, his war, was gone. And yet, he could not let it end here. Not like this. Not when the secrets had only just been revealed, not when the truth had yet to surface, and the ghosts of the past were still waiting to strike. Dante's mind raced, calculating, remembering every contingency, every exit, every option. His empire may have crumbled, his alliances faltered, but one thing remained. He would not lose her. Not to fate, not to death, not to Vincenzo. Outside, sirens blared, rain pattered against the windows. Inside, every second stretched, a thin line between life and oblivion. Dante leaned closer, pressing his forehead to hers, whispering with breathless urgency, "Bella, stay with me. Fight. You hear me? Fight." Her eyes fluttered slightly, a hint of consciousness, a spark of life flickering, and in that instant he knew the war was far from over. A shadow moved in the doorway, tall, unmistakable, and impossible to ignore. Vincenzo had entered the hospital room, a sinister smile playing across his lips as he spoke through the chaos. "Valerio, you've missed the game's final move, and now the Queen's secret will destroy everything. Some bullets miss the heart but kill the soul anyway." The rain lashed against the hospital windows like the world itself was trying to purge the sins of the past. Dante Valerio crouched by Bella's side, black leather still clinging to his soaked frame, hair plastered to his forehead. The smell of antiseptic and blood hung heavy in the air, mixing with the cold metal scent of the hospital. Every machine beeped, every monitor flickered, and every shadow seemed alive with menace. Bella's eyes, half-lidded, shone with pain and revelation. She reached up, trembling, and touched his hand. Her grip was weak, but it spoke volumes. Every heartbeat, every whispered breath carried the weight of years of lies, secrets, and survival. Dante, her voice cracked, raw and trembling. I have to tell you everything. Dante leaned closer, his jaw tight, voice low and unyielding. Now, Isabella, no more lies. I need the truth, all of it, every detail. She swallowed hard, the words lodged like knives in her throat. Memories surged, nights of fear, desperation, and choices made to survive, to protect, to hide. Every flash of the past, every moment she had buried, now demanded release. It wasn't your fault, she whispered, her tears mixing with the blood streaking her cheeks. I made choices I thought would save you. I took a deal. Dante's hands tightened around hers. His eyes bore into hers, demanding, threatening, fragile, all at once. A deal? With who? Vincenzo, she admitted, her voice shaking. Years ago. After you chose the Empire over us, over me. I was broken, Dante. I didn't know how else to survive. She choked on the words, sobs catching in her throat. I faked my death. I disappeared, took his money, tried to frame you. I thought it would end the cycle. I thought I could protect you, protect Luca. Dante's mind froze for a heartbeat, then raced through every detail he had ever known. Betrayal, anger, fear. They collided with love, desire, and the pull of a lifetime spent in shadows. He had believed in vengeance, in empire, in power. But now, nothing mattered more than the fragile truth trembling before him. Why? He demanded, voice low, dangerous. Trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. Why lie to me for all these years? Her hand shook as she touched his cheek. Because I couldn't bear to lose you again. I couldn't let Vincenzo take everything. I fell pregnant, Dante. I had to protect Luca. I backed out. I wanted to come back to you, but the world, your world, I couldn't risk it. Dante felt the floor beneath him shift, the ground of his empire shaking. A storm of emotion roared through him. Love, fury, betrayal, relief, despair. Every scar he bore, every wound inflicted over years of warfare, seemed insignificant against the weight of this revelation. He cupped her face in his hands, fingers tracing the lines of pain and endurance etched across her skin. And Luca? His voice barely above a whisper. He's mine? Her gaze faltered. Tears spilled freely now, her body trembling with confession. Yes, he is yours. I lied again. I needed you to let us go. To let him survive without being dragged into your war. Dante exhaled slowly, relief and fury colliding in his chest. His hands tightened around her shoulders. The man who had ruled empires, who had walked through fire, blood, and betrayal, felt his heart fracture and mend in the same instant. I'm never letting go again, he said, voice low, lethal, filled with promise and a devotion that no bullet, no betrayal, no empire could ever sever. Her lips quivered as she met his gaze. Dante, I wanted to save you from yourself, from everything you became when you wore the crown, the suit, when you ruled with blood instead of heart. Dante pressed his forehead to hers, breathing mingling, heartbeat sinking. I don't need the empire anymore. I don't need the throne. I just need you and him. His hand grazed Luca's small shoulder, securing the fragile tether of life and love that remained. Outside the hospital, the city raged. Rain pummeled the streets. Sirens wailed. Somewhere in the shadows, Vincenzo moved, calculating, anticipating, orchestrating the next act in a drama that had spanned years. Dante's gaze hardened. Every contingency, every weapon, every soldier he trusted, every ally he had ever deployed, they would be needed. The war had not ended. It had only shifted to a new battlefield, one far more personal, far more deadly. Bella's lips parted, whispering again, "Dante, I'm sorry. For everything. For all the lies. For the fear. For the pain I caused. I wanted to protect you from the truth, but the truth, it's here now." Dante's hand lingered over her heart, feeling the pulse beneath, fragile yet resilient. "The truth is," he said, voice low, "dangerous, filled with fire. We survive together. Nothing else matters." A pause, a breath, silence, until the monitors beeped again, and then a sudden distorted transmission flickered on one of the screens near the foot of her hospital bed. A familiar figure, crimson mask, a smile that promised ruin and revenge. Vincenzo, alive, watching, calculating. His voice crackled over the speakers, low and chilling. "Ah, little brother. So many secrets, so many lies, and now your queen has told you everything. How sweet, how fragile, how utterly yours to lose." Dante's eyes narrowed, deadly, his fists clenched, every instinct screaming violence, protection, and fury. The empire could be abandoned, the crown could be destroyed, but Vincenzo would pay. Bella stirred slightly, weak but conscious, whispering, "Dante, he's here. He's never gone." The monitors flickered again, the red glow of emergency lights filling the room. Dante's mind raced. Every plan, every ally, every weapon. Nothing was enough to face the ghost of a brother he had once buried. He leaned over her, gripping her shoulders, voice lethal, unwavering. "No one will take you again. No one will touch him. Not Vincenzo. Not the city. Not anyone. I swear it." Outside, thunder shook the windows. The storm mirrored the chaos within the hospital walls, a world of lies and truth colliding violently. And then, the call he had been dreading. The monitors all went black simultaneously, leaving only one glowing screen. Vincenzo's distorted voice echoed from it, low, menacing, and cold. "Dante, the boy is mine now. Come find us, if you dare." He came for war. She came for absolution. The yacht cut through the midnight waters of Puget Sound, black against the stormy waves, lightning splitting the sky with violent ferocity. The deck glistened wet, slippery underfoot. Rain hammered like bullets, stinging exposed skin and soaking the black suits of Vincenzo's men. Shadows moved like predators, each step calculated, each movement meant to intimidate, to control, to dominate. Dante Valerio stood at the bow, chains biting into his wrists, the remnants of a brutal struggle painted in blood across his face and torso. Every scar, every wound, every bruise was a testament to survival, endurance, and unbroken will. But this was different. Bella, the woman who had ruled his heart, shattered it, and rebuilt it in secret, was across the deck, forced into a satin gown that belied her strength. Vincenzo's grip on her arm was iron, his smirk predatory, confident. The boy, Luca, was held close, a fragile life suspended between vengeance and salvation. Dante's eyes, dark and storm-filled, scanned the yacht, counting, calculating, anticipating. Every loyal soldier he had hidden, every ally ready to act, every contingency he had deployed. None mattered if he failed here. Vincenzo's voice cut through the storm, dripping with arrogance. "Welcome, Dante, you made it, late as always. But tonight, the queen is mine, the boy is mine, and your empire is ashes." Dante's jaw tightened. Every word, every syllable was fire to his soul. Rage, fury, desperation. He let it fuel him, burning through pain and fatigue. Chains clanked as he shifted, testing their strength. The ropes of captivity couldn't hold him forever. Not him. Never him. The storm intensified. Waves slamming against the hull, lightning illuminating every shadowed corner, every knife, every glint of cold steel. Bella's eyes met his across the deck, fear mingled with defiance. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Dante, it's too late. He's everywhere. You can't—" But Dante had already moved. The first signal came, a flicker of hand from the deck below. Silent, calculated. Loyalty to the Valerio bloodline ran deeper than fear, deeper than obedience. The men who had sworn themselves to Vincenzo now hesitated, confusion flickering in their eyes as Dante, chained and bleeding, began to orchestrate the chaos. He lunged, the chains clanging, striking a man across the chest. Rain-slick deck made movement treacherous, but Dante's focus was absolute. Every fist, every strike, every blow was a calculated note in the symphony of vengeance. Vincenzo's men charged, knives and pistols drawn, confidence in their numbers. They didn't account for the storm-driven precision of a man who had survived 10 years of war, betrayal, and loss. Dante moved like a shadow, a predator, his body a weapon, his fists bullets, his mind a battlefield. Every swing, every step, every block was honed by years of survival, by pain, by love, by necessity. One by one, men fell, their screams swallowed by the storm. Blood mixed with rain, running slick across the deck, a testimony to the cost of power, loyalty, and revenge. Vincenzo, watching, realized too late that the chains had not broken Dante. They had only delayed him. With a growl of frustration, he lunged at the dawn, fists raised, eyes burning with the arrogance of one who believes himself untouchable. The duel that followed was brutal, primal. Fists collided with flesh, boots scraped the wet deck, teeth gritted, blood mingled with rain. Lightning illuminated the fury in Dante's eyes, the hatred and love, the past and present converging in a single, lethal storm. Behind them, Bella struggled against her captors, fear and determination driving her. Luca cried out, a small, fragile voice lost amid chaos, but Dante heard him. Always him. The fight escalated. Dante's body bore the marks of years and moments ago, fresh wounds from the chains, the storm, the attack. But each strike, each blow, was precise, unstoppable, unrelenting. Finally, Dante overpowered Vincenzo, fists landing, blows echoing across the deck, until Vincenzo staggered back, blood dripping. Pride shattered, but Vincenzo's smirk remained, defiance in the face of defeat. "You still lose, little brother. Look behind you." Dante froze. Instinct screamed. Heart plummeted. Behind them, cables strung across the deck, rigged with explosives, blinking red. The yacht itself was a time bomb, a floating tomb, and Vincenzo's final cruelty. The countdown had begun, relentless, unyielding. Dante's mind raced, every option, every tactic, every life in his hands. Bella, Luca, himself, all at risk. The waves slammed harder, the storm screamed around them, lightning illuminating the terror and desperation etched on every face. Bella's eyes widened as realization hit. "Dante, the yacht, it's going to blow." He grabbed her, shielding her, feeling Luca press to his chest. Rain and blood mixed, soaking them, but the warmth of life remained in his arms. Every second was a gamble. Every breath a defiance against the inevitable. Vincenzo, smirking through the chaos, watched the storm he had orchestrated, confident that the dawn would fail, that the queen and heir would be lost. Dante's gaze hardened. One choice, one move, every calculation, every lifetime of skill and instinct converged in a single deadly decision. He lunged at Vincenzo again, throwing every ounce of strength, rage, and strategy into the final confrontation. Fists collided, teeth struck, blood sprayed. Pain, rage, fury, every emotion exploded in the storm, a battle of brothers, of blood, of betrayal and love intertwined. The explosion's countdown ticked in Dante's mind, louder than the storm, sharper than the lightning, more insistent than his own heartbeat. He reached Vincenzo, grasped him, struggled against the strength and weight of years of hate, and prepared to cast him into the dark waters below, a final act of vengeance and survival. Bella cried out, Luca whimpering, the storm screaming around them. Time seemed suspended. Every choice, every movement, every breath was a knife edge between life and death. The deck shook violently, the rigging straining, the red lights flashing faster. Dante's muscles screamed, lungs burned, but his determination never wavered. Finally, with a supreme effort, he hurled Vincenzo toward the bow, over the railing. The brother who had haunted his life for years was gone, plunging into the stormy waters below. But Dante didn't have a moment to celebrate. The yacht was rigged to explode, and only seconds remained. He grabbed Bella and Luca, shielding them with his body, sprinting toward the side ladder, toward salvation, toward the edge of the inferno. The storm and explosion combined into a symphony of chaos around them. As they reached the railing, a final shockwave of the detonator ripped through the yacht. Dante's vision blurred, ears rang, and the world erupted in fire and water. The last thing he saw before the explosion consumed everything was Vincenzo's hand, reaching up from the smoke and flames, laughing, a promise that the war was far from over. Empires burn. Love rises from the ashes. The explosion ripped through the yacht like a thunderclap of destiny. Flames licked the night sky, consuming wood, steel, and the sins of years past. Water erupted, waves surging violently as debris was thrown into the storm-tossed Puget Sound. Dante Valerio fought against the blast, his arms shielding Bella and Luca, his body a barrier against fire, glass, and chaos. Smoke and rain merged into a blinding haze, stinging eyes and burning lungs. Every breath Dante took was a struggle, a fight against instinct to collapse, against the world that had tried to swallow him whole. Bella clung to him, drenched, blood streaking her face, her gown torn and sodden. Luca, small and fragile, whimpered in her arms, unaware of the storm's true fury, but sensing the danger, the fear, the intensity of the father who had come for him. Dante's arms were iron, unyielding. He pushed through the waves of heat and debris, his mind a sharpened blade of calculation and instinct. Every second counted. Every movement meant survival or death. The yacht exploded again, a secondary wave of fire and water, knocking Dante off balance. He kicked violently, clawing toward the remnants of the railing. The storm raged, wind screaming like a chorus of demons, lightning splitting the sky in jagged bursts. He reached the railing, gripping it with burning hands, pulling Bella and Luca over with him. The water swallowed them, cold and merciless. Shock stole their breaths, icy and penetrating. But Dante didn't release his hold. He wouldn't. He couldn't. The waves tossed them violently. A chunk of wreckage struck Dante's shoulder, pain flaring through him like fire, but he ignored it. Bella screamed, but he silenced her fear with the strength of his arms, a fortress against a world that had tried to destroy them. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed as the storm and sea battled him. Every movement was measured, instinctual. Every breath taken was a victory, every second alive a defiance of the destruction that had chased them from the yacht. Finally, the waves eased slightly, giving way to the shore. Dante dragged them toward the sand, muscles screaming, lungs burning, but determination never faltering. He reached the beach, pulling Bella and Luca onto solid ground. They collapsed, bodies entangled, soaked, trembling, hearts hammering against ribs, as if trying to escape the horrors of the night. Dante pressed his forehead to Bella's, feeling her pulse, feeling life, feeling love. Luca stirred between them, small arms reaching out, eyes wide and trusting. Dante cradled him, feeling the weight of survival, of blood, of fire, of empire reduced to ashes, leaving only the fragile but unbreakable bond of family. The dawn was breaking. Mist hovered over the beach like a shroud, the storm retreating into memory. The first weak rays of sunlight reflected off the waves, glinting on debris, on blood-streaked sand, on the remnants of a world Dante had once ruled with fear and fire. Bella looked at him, her eyes weary, yet filled with a softness that spoke of survival, of absolution. "Who are you now, Dante?" she whispered, voice trembling. He looked down at Luca sleeping between them, a life untainted by empire, by blood, by vengeance. He looked at Bella, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her gaze steady despite everything. "I'm theirs," he said quietly, voice low but certain. "Nothing else matters." For the first time in a decade, Dante allowed himself to breathe. No empire, no enemies, no blood debts, just family. They sat in silence, letting the waves crash against the shore, letting the mist hide the devastation, letting the sun rise on a life that had been carved from destruction, but forged into hope. But Dante's instincts never slept. He had survived ambushes, betrayals, massacres. The Valerio name carried enemies who waited in shadows, who planned revenge, who hunted the remnants of an empire. He knew this peace was temporary, fragile. Bella leaned against him, trembling but alive, and he held her close. Luca slept peacefully, the first sign of innocence in years, a symbol of what they were fighting for. The remnants of the storm and the destroyed yacht behind them were a tomb of the past. Dante had lost billions, power, influence, but in their place, he had something stronger, something no enemy could touch. The horizon burned gold as the sun rose fully. The mist swirled, hiding danger, hiding what was yet to come. Dante closed his eyes briefly, allowing himself the smallest moment of reprieve, knowing that love, family, and survival were worth every scar, every battle, every loss. Then a sound, faint at first, almost drowned out by the waves, footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Dante opened his eyes. The sand shifted. A shadow moved across the mist, tall, unmistakable. A figure emerged from the haze, calm, confident, lethal. His breath caught. Even here, in what should have been safety, even on this deserted beach. The past had not released him. The figure stepped closer, a cruel smile on his lips. The name burned into Dante's mind instantly. Vincenzo, alive. Dante rose, holding Luca close, eyes flashing with fury and determination. Bella stepped forward, ready to fight, ready to survive, ready to defend the fragile peace they had just won. The sun reflected off the water, illuminating the truth. The empire may have fallen, the city may have burned, but the war was far from over. Vincenzo stopped a few feet away, voice calm, icy, lethal. "Enjoy your little family reunion, brother. While you can, I promised you ashes, Dante, and this time I intend to deliver them all,